Hello and welcome back to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live 2020. My name is Richard Logan and I'm the event and content producer at Automotive Logistics and have the pleasure of your company for the next 30 minutes. So this session is all about accelerating digitalization and the transformation that's taking place across the automotive logistics. And I'm joined by two experts and supply chain logistics leaders, Greg Toorman from Agco Corporation and Govin Ranganathan from Nio USA, here to share their insights and delve into the questions that you're asking. So welcome to the panel, guys.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody.
Great to have you here. So I want to kick off this session straight away by launching an audience poll to get your views to see where we're at across the industry. So I'm just going to launch that now. You'll have two choices. So does your company have a proactive or reactive approach to digitalization? And as we wait for the results to come through, perhaps we can quickly start with you, Greg, for a brief introduction. And why are you here on this digitalization panel?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for your time. My name is Greg Torman, and I'm responsible for Agco Global Logistics, Materials Management, and Demand Planning. One thing for us at Agco is to constantly be learning and engaging in new ways of operating and driving performance into our business. And part of that is sharing ideas that we have, listening to other ideas other organizations have, and constantly bringing together a new way of approaching our business challenges. Thanks again for your time.
Great, thanks, Greg. And Govin, if we can welcome you back on the stage as well. Yeah, please share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Hello, everybody. I'm Govin Ranganathan. I'm the head of logistics for Nio USA. Nio is a global startup of EV. We are just not an EV. We are a pioneer in user experience, ecosystem. So it's a little bit more than EV. And I've been with Nio Logistics, supporting the launch of vehicles in China. Plus, our interest is, since we are tied to user experience and user ecosystem on our sales and marketing and our overall vision standpoint. So we bring a lot of that pedigree into our logistics and supply chain to make sure to focus on connectivity, interconnectedness, and use of cyber physical systems. So it'll be great. It'll be great to have this conversation today.
Great. Well, welcome to you both again. And I can see that many of you have been answering the poll. So I'm going to close that now. Apologies if you didn't get it in time. And I can share the results are overwhelmingly in one direction. So with most of you believing that you are being proactive, your companies are in a proactive position when it comes to their digitalization strategy. Perhaps that might change when it comes to the end of this conversation. So just to confirm, we had 77% of you saying proactive and 23% saying reactive. Does that surprise you, Greg?
It does surprise me a little bit. I would think that it would be a little bit closer to, call it 40% proactive and 60% reactive. But that's a positive sign that many of the participants are actively engaging in offensive strategy, and with that, taking control of things rather than sitting back and waiting for other things to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Govin, how do you feel about those results?
I think if I'm thinking, if you had taken this survey maybe 4 months back or 5 months back, maybe we would have seen a little different result than what we are seeing now. Since we are into the COVID phase, I'm sure there has been a lot of focus on using more of digital technology. And I'm surprised at the 75, but that's a good thing. It's a good thing. But as long as, being a proactive in terms of digitalization also requires certain steps, and there are some essential elements that are required to be ready. And it'll be great to talk about that if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's one thing having a proactive approach to using Teams or Zoom to connect virtually or on platforms like these. But there's another thing where you're driving real change and optimizing your supply chain. So perhaps we can delve a little bit further into that. Maybe we can kick off by talking about digitalization strategies, and how easy is it to change from reactive to proactive? Can you flip a switch, or is it built over a longer period of time?
Govin, you want to take a hit at that one first, please?
Sure. Actually, you know what, Richard, I have a slide on it that I would like to present, which is called the reactive versus proactive. I'm not sure if you guys can see my screen. Let's go with it. Can you guys see my screen?
You just have to click share.
Okay, hold on. Give me a minute. Let me see.
Maybe while he's doing that, Greg, you can give us your take.
Sure. Get up here big so everybody can see it. So to answer that question, is this just flipping the switch? And what I'd like to do is reflect back in time to when Agco put together our first global materials management strategy back in 2012. And with that, at that point in time, the vision was about 8 years out. And in order for us to get to that vision, we had a number of, call it sequential steps that we needed to be able to achieve and then sustain before we'd be prepared to move on to the next level of maturity. And with that, I would say it's definitely not a flip the switch on, even if you've got a checkbook that doesn't have any type of concern. It still takes time, because without processing the right people driving your tools and systems, the sustainability is just not there. So
yeah,
it does
absolutely
take some time. Govin?
I think, Greg, you have a very good point there. From my side, I think, can you guys see my slide now? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay. So to answer your question, is it a flip of a switch? It's not flip of a switch, just like Greg said, right? Because in my life, in my last 25 years in manufacturing and logistics, I have been on both sides, being a reactive and proactive. And in reactive, we are continually correcting deficiencies. Like, we make short-term improvements, right? We are focusing on supplier non-performance, like I said. And we prioritize everything based on problems, and what the output is. Can our disruptions become part of our life? It impacts our performance and customer care. And we also make change in sourcing decisions and making sure that, hey, if we change the sourcing, change the supplier, things will automatically get better. So it's also the change in mindset that you have to being proactive. And proactive, it requires a drive right from on the top. It's the vision and the mission. It's the innate ability inside for you to change, and also the culture within the organization to support it. And at the same time, supporting it with the right talent, and supporting with knowing what your end goal is. Where do you want to be at the end of digitalization? You cannot have like an open checkbook. It requires a combination of that to make sure that you can. So it's a combination of culture change, it's a vision, mission, and the talent, and know what you need at the end of the day.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I think you touched upon the technology there as well that's kind of required to obviously digitalize the strategy and drive the company forward. Right now, we're going through a challenging period for automotive right across the board. The financial belts have been tightened significantly. Are we in danger that digitalization strategies can be slowed as a result of lack of resources, or, like I say, the tightening of those financial belts?
Well, Richard, that's always an interesting question. And for many people, I think in the last maybe 6 months, they've come to realize is the cost of failure acceptable? And to give that some thought. And then what is the insurance plan or an insurance policy to insulate you from that cost of failure? And I believe in many cases, investment into digitalization and a new approach may be that type of insurance policy to ensure your business continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that really kind of highlights the point around the offensive and defensive strategies that you sort of mentioned. A lot of companies are in survival mode right now, and understandably so. But it's important to be offensive in these kind of areas to ensure that you really can drive forward. Govin, can you add something now?
Yes, if I would like to give a small example regarding that, why digitalization is so important. If you guys are, all of you guys are familiar with S&P 500, right? If you look at 1950s, each S&P 500 company had a 60-year lifespan of the company. But if you look at the S&P 500 now, the companies are barely touching 20 years. The top ones in S&P 500. What that tells you is that you have to innovate yourself, you got to change yourself, and that's very, very much required. So for the companies to be in existence, they need to continually disrupt themselves, they need to continually innovate themselves, and that is key. And that same thing applies to logistics and supply chain here also. So it is, definitely we understand that if you don't you have to have the focus to drive where the endpoint is, where you need to be. At the same time, investment is a big concern, definitely. But this also provides us an opportunity to collaborate and partner with others so that we can share technology, we can jointly do things together to develop and help each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Some fantastic points there. Sorry, Greg, were you going to add to that?
No, I think Govin hit it right on the head. And with that is the continuation of trying and learning and sometimes failing, but learning from those failures and continuing to drive forward in an effort to get further ahead or get more information to make better decisions for your organization.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you both use the words, failing. It's not something that we hear, publicly used very often. Certainly not in case studies and things like that. But it is the best way to learn, and I think it's critically important in company culture, to have that ability to fail and fail fast and move on and learn from it. So, and I believe digitalization can certainly help that.
Sure.
Great. Okay. So let's move on a little bit. Greg, on your first slide, you mentioned that your digitalization strategy change started a number of years ago, way before the pandemic had even been dreamt up and by any of the doomsday specialists. Since over the last 4 months, has it impacted your approach to digitalization strategies? The way you run your supply chain operations, have they been impacted? What's the new normal looking like for your supply chain, and how have you had to adapt?
Okay. So with that, maybe I'll use some slides, Richard, because everybody likes to see pictures, right? It helps maybe bring some reality in this. So let me get this a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you see on the screen, this is a view of our risk management profile that we put together back in 2015. And with that, some of our initial kind of game plan was, how is it that we're monitoring our suppliers, managing the end-to-end moves and the type of things that come up, weather, geopolitical strikes, etc., and then the country risk maps. Somewhat of a very reactive approach to risk management, as typically is. What we found during the epidemic was that this approach could be converted into a little different way of thinking. And let me get up on the screen. And what we were able to do was convert this reactive risk management methodology to a very proactive approach in managing COVID. And with that, evolve from not just identifying where the risks were, but where they were emerging, where would they be, and where actions could be taken to avert some of that risk. Again, evolving from defensive to offensive strategy. And as many of you may recall, back in the the March timeframe, things were actively moving quickly. What we were able to do with our risk management was overlay the COVID cases at a postal code level across the globe. And on the screen, you have it, I believe, as an example of Germany, I believe. Let me make sure. And with that, you can see up in the upper left on March 5th, we had 66 suppliers that were in postal codes that had a high level of COVID growth, which we viewed could bring some type of restrictions, some type of suppliers' ability to, run at their capacitized level. The following day, that went up almost fivefold, right? So the ability to manage and see things developing, taking the appropriate action, enabled us to take a lot of offensive steps, which then enabled us to take action, pulling supply ahead, not just for our European sites, but also for our South and North American sites, as well as back into APA. And we believe that we would not have been as successful as we were keeping our sites running if we would have waited to see what was happening. And this is the result of our team members asking the question, how can we get out in front of it? Where can we go to get smarter and manage time more effectively? And as a result of that, asking those questions, we were able to get a lot of great ideas from our team members who are, driving the business and subsequently taking action. So what we take away from this is continue to drive more and more use of technology to proactively solve those headaches and heartaches that you have, that you know of, and identify those that you don't even know are there yet.
Yeah, fantastic, and some really key insights there, and I think just highlights what you were saying earlier about this is not a flip the switch. You can't go from reactive to proactive. This takes time to build, but the results are there to see of how you were able to manage your time through the pandemic. And yeah, as you say, the results are there to see for the audience as well. Earlier in the conference, I ran a poll with our audience asking which sector across the supply chain they felt would stand the most to gain from digitalization. And before I reveal the results to you, I'd be interested to know, Govin, where you think and the potential, the real potential lies. So inbound, implant, outbound, or end-to-end supply chain management.
I've been automotive factory all my life. So if I look at automotive factory from a manufacturing standpoint, today's manufacturing factories are highly automated. If you look at highly automated factories, they have from body shop, paint to trims, everything is interconnected. You can track every vehicle, every part, and everywhere. So where the biggest benefit you're talking about, the question is, what we are looking at is how to make use of now bringing the same kind of automation and smartness into logistic processes, which we currently have. We do have in bits and pieces. But I see the common challenge is in logistics is the need for the connectedness and access to the real-time insights. So when we track in logistics, we do have touch points or touch points where we know exactly what's going on with the logistic process or where the parts is. But I think there is a need at this time, similar to the automated factory that we have, is a self-managing and self-monitoring supply chain. Basically, if I look at it, I'm thinking in terms of I used to have material planners. Material planners are the one who follow the part, who track the part from end to end. They make sure there is no disruption in the factory floor, there is no shortages and everything. But some of that technology, the material follow-up, could go into more if all the networks are interconnected. And there are predictive analysis that is, so you can predict failures before they happen. And definitely that requires data and it can be done. So what that does is then you can take a part of your resources, which is the material follow-up, and use them appropriately to get the right material to the right place. So the advantage will be, I think, less disruptions in the factory, and definitely more predictive analysis in the supply chain from a material standpoint. And definitely everybody will gain. I think your supply chain, you will have more visibility to the upstream into your part supplier all the way to the factory. I think from an inbound standpoint, it will benefit a lot more. In outbound, it's very but from an inbound, there is a lot of based on the suppliers and based on situations, based on pandemic, there's a lot of vulnerability and fluidity, and all of that stuff will get better definitely as we implement digitalization.
Yeah. Okay. So very clearly on the inbound side, clearly there's benefits to be had across the sector, but you're most excited about the potential of the inbound. And Greg, would you agree?
I agree. That is the right starting point, depending upon where your organization is within the maturity process. And I understand clearly where Govin is, and that's for sure the right place. For us, as we've been at the inbound side for now, let's call it about 7 years, we've somewhat mastered what we're going to get done there, and now we focus on execution and optimization of performance. The next opportunity for us is that outside. So starting at the retail point, and then being able to bring that back closer to the supply into real time. And by doing that, eliminating some of that bullwhip effect, and then managing our most critical resource, time, in a much more efficient way through across our complete supply network, right? At the same time, being able to deliver a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Why? Because as we are now starting to be looking at the point and clicks from the web browser, from all the potential customers, what demand are they looking at in terms of options, in terms of product series? How does that vary from what we've seen in the past? Do we need to take action? And by capturing some of that data, we're then able to utilize some of the AI and ML that Govin referenced to deliver a better performance across the demand network, and subsequently improving our performance to our customers, reducing the cost to our organizations, and allowing resources to focus more proactively than reactively cleaning up a mess that was caused 3 months ago.
Yeah, fascinating. And I think that highlights the two different stages in their lifespans of the organizations. This is not a one size fits all. It's very much tailored to the organization, where they're at in terms of their infancy or longevity. So yeah, fantastic answers there. Let's take a look at the outside your organization. So looking at your suppliers and your service providers, how important is it that they keep up or even help drive your digitalization strategies? What are you doing to work with them, and how are they helping you achieve your digital goals? Greg, I'll start with you.
This is a very interesting question for a lot of organizations, right? And I'll ask the audience members to think about this question. Are you a customer of choice to your suppliers? And then maybe another question along those lines would be, have you ever asked your suppliers how you could be a better customer to them? Because this really is a two-way street, right? And there's so much input that you can learn from those thousands of call it commercial partners that you have to drive organizational improvement, not just within your network, but across. And one of those things for Agco back in 2013, when we asked those questions, was you're a very challenging company to do business with. And part of that was how Agco grew through acquisition over the years. We took that information back and we do business. If you're a supplier in Germany shipping to 40 different plants, the likelihood of you utilizing 20 different ways of engaging from a B2B is highly likely. That's inefficient for Agco, and that's definitely inefficient for our supply partners. So we took it upon ourselves to look and standardize how we do B2B across the globe and how our transportation management system works across the globe. We didn't just stop there. We said, what's next? What can we do better? And the feedback was, well, if you could turn these two transactions into one, we could save time and improve accuracy of data, right? Which is very important for all of our digitized supply networks. So for us, being a customer of choice is very, very important for us to understand. Secondly, learn from. And third, execute on those opportunities to bring value to the complete demand network.
Yeah, absolutely. And Govin?
I think I agree with all of the points that Greg brought out. I think, like I said, as a supplier, I do same thing as an OEM, or as a supplier, you got to do is who is the most important person or thing for you, which is customer, right? Customer is central. And what are you doing to improve customer experience? You got to ask that question. And what creative and innovative offerings are you presenting to the customer? Or are you trying to maintain status quo, right? Because this whole thing, so what this requires is, as a company, you have to understand the customer pain points. Without understanding the customer pain points, you will not be able to serve the customer better. You cannot. And also understand what the customer is experiencing. So you need to have, so as I work as an OEM, I look for suppliers who understand their customers or who are willing to, and the same thing applies to me, right? You need both hands to clap. So instead of looking at a supplier saying, hey, you put certain demands saying this is what you got to deliver, we work in a collaborative manner. And there are critical processes that we know, we understand critical services that are there. And how do we collaboratively work to make it better, either through the use of skilled talent, use of processes, or use of technology? Those are very key things, right? So as a supplier, as an OEM, you want to work with suppliers who are focused in that, who are focused in making the customer as their supreme focal point and improving the process. So bringing the digitalization has helped all of us in cutting many steps, like Greg mentioned, right? There are many processes that have become simpler. And definitely that's the way forward, but it also requires a strategy that go behind it and the care and empathy for the customers.
Yeah, fantastic, absolutely. And we've got a couple of minutes left, so I want to try and squeeze a couple of more questions out of you, just while we have you on the virtual stage. So, what's exciting you? What technology is exciting you right now in the supply chain market? Whether something you're planning, something you're implementing, what's exciting you and why? Greg, I'll start with you again.
Okay. So for us, one of the next phases is getting into that capacity analysis across our tier one network, as well as our own internal factories. And with that, we can then use our digital twin simulation to understand what can be done with real-time data in terms of what supplier limitations are based on this build plan or revenue scenario plan. And within that, be able to get down to where we need to focus, that 0.2% that needs your attention in a quick manner. So for us, the supplier capacity management piece is the next proactive step that we need to go on, and we're in pilot phase right now.
Yeah, that certainly does sound exciting. And I mentioned the end of the session. I think Govin might have already taken that as his leave. So perhaps that's a good note to end on. And yeah, thank you to Govin, no longer with us, but Greg as well, for some fascinating insights and exchanges there. Really interesting to see the difference between yourself and Nio. And it sounds like there's some really exciting plans ahead for Agco and your team.
Yeah, you could say that. But in the end, it starts with a vision, having your team involved in creating that vision. They own it, and then they help deliver it to reality. but continue to build on it to get better every day. That's an operating culture that we at Agco live.
Well, I think that's the perfect point to end on. So thank you again, Greg. Fascinating session. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned for our audience. Coming at you right now, we have a finished vehicle logistics session coming up with FCA North America, Hyundai Glovis, CFR Rinkins. Another great session coming up, some great insights to follow, Greg. So stay tuned, and thanks once again for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the conference.